Hi, I'm Nickie Jakeman. I'm a doctor and I work in the A&E department at Bath Hospital. So I just want you to imagine if every hospital, every GP surgery, every mental health unit, every care home had a wellbeing garden. What would that be like? Wouldn't it be great if we designed our healthcare settings so that we could experience health and well-being not only as we receive treatment inside the hospital, but also as we experience the land around the hospital, the green space, the potential green space around the hospital. I mean, intuitively, we know that it feels good when we're outside, whether we're alone or whether we're with other people. Even Hippocrates said thousands of years ago, if you feel in a bad mood, go for a walk. If you still feel in a bad mood, go for another walk. My local hospital in Bath was moved to the green edges of the city during World War I to help support the health and well-being of the returning soldiers who were coming back from the trenches. And if we go back to old documents from that time, even then they recognised and they referenced the importance of green space and growing to the health and well-being of the returning soldiers and of other patients. They talk about the importance of green space, they talk about flower growing competitions, and they talk about growing and nurturing and rearing hens on the site. There are already pockets of healthcare professionals and like-minded enthusiasts that have started thinking in this way. So there are GP surgeries and hospitals where the grounds have been deliberately developed and designed to support health and well-being. Places where green social prescribing is starting to evolve. They're places where patients can be encouraged to take part in a range of nature and outdoor activities to support their health and well-being. And we know that time spent in a range of nature-based activities is not only good for our mental health, but there is growing evidence that it's good for our physical health too. A recent report by Public Health England on improving access to green spaces cites the improvements and the benefits to both coronary artery disease, cognitive function, mortality and maternal outcomes, all as evidence of the improvements in health and well-being that can be impacted by spending time in green space. It is possible to deliberately design gardens for well-being. So we know that we feel more connected to nature when we're in complex natural environments, like the edge of a woodland, a place which is rich in biodiversity, where plants and insects thrive together, a place where we can hear the trees rustling, the grasses blowing in the wind, and the bees buzzing, and where we can smell the sap of pine trees. These are all things that, probably through our evolution, make us feel safe, and that gives us a real sense of well-being. The gardens could be designed to bring a feeling of escape and refuge when we enter them, as well as providing spaces for social activities and interactions. These gardens can be places where both patients, staff and their families spend time together. So imagine if every healthcare setting grew some of its own food that could be shared, healthy food that could be used in the kitchens. And I've heard of one hospital up in Calderdale that's doing this, where food that is grown in their wellbeing garden, grown by the staff in the hospital and volunteers and people from the local community, where that is shared with each other, where they have tea parties using the mint leaves to brew up their tea and fruit that is grown in the garden to enjoy together. So a sense of well-being arises through developing meaningful relationships at a whole number of different levels. With yourself, with your friends and family, with your community, with the place in which you live and with the world around us. Noticing our environment being able to give to each other and the world around us, getting involved and learning new things, all help to bring a sense of well-being. It's more than just spending time in the garden that will bring us that sense of well-being. There are other ways too, and perhaps the way we involve people in planning, developing, planting and maintaining our well-being gardens is also another route to supporting well-being and sustaining the garden for the future. So as I've said, there are examples of well-being gardens in healthcare settings around the country. And I've heard stories of how patients have used them as part of their recuperation, and also how some have spent time in them as they have prepared for the final weeks and days of their lives. And there are stories of wellbeing gardens that are bringing the generations together, in care homes, particularly bringing school children and residents of care homes together. I've also heard stories of how healthcare staff spending time in their wellbeing gardens, maybe just 20 or 30 minutes at lunchtime, but escaping from the busy doing of the wards and just having a little bit of time to get some headspace so that they can go back onto their wards and be a bit more available for their patients. I think there are a whole range of opportunities for wellbeing gardens in healthcare settings. But I'd just like to finish off by a quote that I found from a lady called Deborah Griffin, which I found on the Bathscape website. And I thought this was a lovely quote to just summarise the things that we've been talking about. So she says, "Although I will never completely understand the whole bee thing, or quite remember the difference between a frog and a toad, or be able to recognise the various star constellations, I do know that within minutes of being outdoors, my spirits will lift and I will feel utterly rejuvenated. And that can't be underestimated."